My name is Stevie Johnson. I'm the clinical lead at the Royal National Institute of Blind People. I know this is the last slot of the day. So thank you for A, still being here, and B, still looking quite perky, I have to say. As I said, I'm Stevie Johnson. This is my colleague, Josh Feehan, and we're just going to spend the last part of this day talking about support for your patients. Before I start, luckily the ophthalmologist just before did drop the name ECLO or Eye Clinic Liaison Officer. Have any of you heard of an ECLO?
Yeah.
No? Great.
What about a rehab officer?
Or a rehab officer?
Yes.
That's good.
Yes. Yeah, think rehab, ROVI sometimes for short?
Yes.
Good, okay. Alright. So before we start,
Nearly there.
it's alright, I'm going to read you a story. So I'm going to read you a real life example.
I've got to switch to the up there now.
Of a patient. We're going to call this person A. At 15 years of age, I was working at my weekend job when I started to notice I was squinting to read the boards and licence plates. That night, I asked to borrow my mum's glasses to do my homework, as you do. By that Thursday, I was sat in an optician's thinking I was going to get some contact lenses. This was not the case. That night, I was rushed to Royal Shrewsbury Hospital for tests, as I'd gone from 20/20 vision to struggling to see the top letter on the board with one eye and nothing but light out of the other. For months, they struggled to diagnose what was wrong with my eyes, but finally, after endless visits to the consultant in Birmingham, they told me I had Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, two very dodgy optic nerves. From this, I was certified as severely sight impaired and taking away all my dreams with it. One thing I will never forget from that conversation is the consultant informing me now I'll be able to receive a discounted rail travel card. Great, and just what I wanted. Unfortunately for me and my family, there was no emotional or practical support on offer at that time. We were left to training the internet and struggle through at that difficult time. So, A didn't have access to an eye clinic liaison officer, or any support around the time of his diagnosis, or indeed in the time after that. For a number of years now, RNIB and our partner organisations in the sight loss sector have been working towards providing that emotional and practical support in the eye clinic setting. And I'm happy to say that around 44% of all NHS trusts now do have an eye clinic liaison officer in place. I do have a list on the table at the back of hospitals in the West Midlands area if you're interested to know. If your hospital has that, let me know just at the end. So what do they actually do? They provide personalised, practical and emotional support in the eye clinic, and it's ongoing as that person's needs change. So the primary emotional support that they offer is listening, reassuring, normalising, empathising, and if someone perhaps needs further emotional support or counselling, they can make a referral for that to take place. The practical support is advice and information about their eye condition, but also about the raft of services that are available outside of the hospital. Okay? This links to the next point, which is they are the bridge between health and social care. So where there isn't an ECLO in place, we often hear patients say that they've been given the name of their eye condition or they've been told they've got an eye condition, and in the case of dry AMD that we just heard, perhaps there's no treatment, so they may well then be discharged from the eye clinic. But what they're not told about is all that practical and emotional support out in the community. So ECLOs are that bridge between the health and social care. They also signpost or make referrals to other local and national services and organisations. This is a huge... I once asked an ECLO to write down on a piece of paper for me all the different organisations that she referred to. After she'd given me the filthiest look that she possibly could, this was obviously a limitless list depending on the needs and wants and wishes of that person. They assist with certification and registration. So I know you've had mentioned the CVI form today, which you get copies of. Okay, this is quite a process to go through, the signing, but also understanding how it links to registration with the sensory team and what support that can then enable someone to get. And importantly, ECLOs are a point of contact, enabling patients and carers to understand the journey, the processes, and what's likely to happen. They're a single point of contact, which means they haven't got to keep going back and asking the secretary or the ophthalmologist, or you guys, what's going to happen next. So if we go back to our case study, to A, what might have happened to A had he had that emotional and practical support? Firstly, he would have received that emotional support, that first line emotional support. Someone to listen to him and his family, to listen to their concerns and worries, to reassure, but also to have the time to do that, and to help identify those key issues. This was a young person, he was 15 years old at the time. Okay? Secondly, there's the practical advice and practical support. So, as well as information and advice, remember he said he had to trawl the internet to find information. The eye condition he had is relatively uncommon, so he's unlikely to have heard of it or perhaps met anybody else with it. So, information about his eye condition, but the referrals that could have been made on his behalf. 2, vision rehab. He's 15, so he's still in education. Okay, so perhaps the VI education team. 2, for mobility training, perhaps with his ROBI or his rehab officer. Family support, information on financial support, welfare benefits perhaps. The list is never ending. He was told that he was going to be registered as sight impaired. Probably never heard that term before, never come across a CVI form, didn't understand what that meant in terms of links to social care and to the sensory team. So that ECLO could have provided him with that information, and then would have provided ongoing support, not just for him, but family members, parents, family carers, friends and others.
My name's Josh Feehan again. I'm the project manager. I work around a Department of Health funded projects looking around raising the standards and awareness around vision rehabilitation. Before I start, I should just mention that the story that Stevie read out there, we thought it would be a good idea, but that was my story. So I was a person at 15 in sunny old Shropshire that lost his sight, and I'm still stood here 12 years later, so it is okay, sight loss, it's just getting the support, I suppose. But I'd just like to start with, I don't know how many stats and facts you've already heard today, but I just thought I'd give you some more around general sight loss in the UK. So around 2 million people, it's estimated, are living with sight loss currently. Those over the age of 90, 50% of those have some form of sight loss. 25% over the age of 75, again living with sight loss. And I just wanted to put this picture here. Last year, it was at a presentation I was at, and it shows 6 generations, a 6-generation family. And it just demonstrates that older people are living. And again, sight loss is more prominent with older people, as we've heard quite a lot today. And interestingly, the consultant stole my thunder a bit really. So by 2047, there'll be an increase of 65-year-olds by 50%, which is huge really. Move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so what does sight loss look like in the Midlands? So again, 20% of that 2 million, so 410,000 people living with sight loss in the Midlands. And I just thought I'd talk about some other conditions, so it's not just necessarily sight loss that people live with, it may not be their primary condition. So 60,000 estimated to have dual sensory loss, so both hearing and sight loss. Dementia, a growing condition across the country, across the world to be fair. 20,000 of those will be living with both dementia and sight loss. And also, 20% of stroke survivors will, over 20%, Stevie corrected me the other day, have some form of a significant sight loss later on in their recovery. Again, so I'm guessing you probably come across patients with these conditions quite regularly. In terms of how this looks like across the Midlands in terms of eye appointments, 1.25 million just last year, ophthalmic appointments, huge numbers. And interestingly, Steve just talked about the ECLO role. Across the trusts, the 27 trusts, less than 50% actually have that ECLO support. And as you probably just recognised from the video and what sort of role they do, they are a critical role, and it's obviously very important that we try and raise the number of those, increase those across the trust, across the country and specifically the Midlands. And finally, what I'm just about to talk to you now as well is around vision rehabilitation. So Hugh talks about the Health and Social Care Act. You may have all heard about the Care Act 2014 last year. Yeah, so as part of that, Local authorities have a responsibility to make provision for vision rehabilitation. Thank you. So what is vision rehabilitation? So it's about, as I just mentioned, it's a critical part of the sight loss pathway. Most conditions now have a pathway, a journey on how a patient should be treated. So from an ECLO, again, the link into health, social care, vision rehabilitation sits the majority of the time within the local authority, or it might be contracted out. But again, this is a crucial service. A rehabilitation worker or officer, roving, they have different names, sensory officer maybe, again have been specially trained at university to support primarily blind and farsighted people on gaining confidence and the skills to maintain living at home independently, have a form of quality of life. Again, just to give you some real examples, an older person potentially living at home alone in their 70s, at risk of falls, the rehab officer can make sure that they are moving safely within their home, so removing any risk of falls. Again, quite crucial. Again, daily living tasks, preparing hot and cold meals, making a cup of tea, may sound pretty easy to most people, but when you've got sight loss, it can be pretty difficult, to be fair. Burn my fingers quite a lot making drinks. Yeah, that's not the right way to do it. Yeah, and also technology, as you talked about earlier, and that is funny, I had a text from my GP today saying that they're all on training today, so the surgery will be back open tomorrow, so it's training. And it talks to me, told me on training this morning. And again, remain in employment. Crucially, lots of people, when they lose their sight first, and they think, oh, they're going to lose their job. Actually, it's not the case. There's schemes in place where they can maintain employment. Again, my mobility officer supported me in train travel, make sure that I can get to work independently. Ask your patient the question, have you ever received vision rehabilitation? Also, just because someone isn't certified, so even if they haven't got a CVI or they're not registered with the local authorities, blind and farsighted, they can still receive rehab. So if you see an elderly person, they look like they're struggling with their sight, just make a referral. It's quick and easy, just pick up the phone, send a letter. Most sensory teams will accept any form of referral, especially from a GP. They just need the basic pieces of information. Next, obviously, if one of your clients, patients, has received rehab 20 years ago, doesn't matter. They can receive it as many times as possible. If the circumstances change and they need support, refer them as quickly as possible. The earlier the rehab officer gets in, the better. Again, medication management. Probably you see a lot of your clients potentially, and when I go and do a lot of shadowing across the country, one of the key parts of an assessment is based around medication management. So people are struggling to manage their daily pills, I suppose, the timings, or losing them on the floor, so they can teach some practical strategies to make sure they can do that sort of stuff, which is great. We have got some resources, so I've left some around good practice principles. So we've with the sector created these principles, so they are service standards. However, they're written in the first person, so the patient, the blind and farsighted person, understands what they should be receiving from vision rehab. So again, make a referral and ask the question. That's probably the most important things. Now, just to move on in terms of the ECLO services, there is a register online. Ask your local eye clinic if they've got one, and we've got a register online that Stevie may be able to give some further information about. Yep. So next.
Yeah, if on the RNIB website, in the professional section, if you type in ECLO, you can get the ECLO register, and that lists every hospital in the UK alphabetically, and it will tell you what service is provided and a contact phone number and email if you'd like that. We've also given the RNIB helpline number, and if you'd like to pick up a helpline card on your way out, the helpline will be happy to point you in the direction of your nearest ECLO as well.